So, if you were running a business today, and I mean, especially in a high pressure, low margin field like commercial trucking or, logistics,
Oh, absolutely. You're constantly fighting gravity.
you really are. It's not just the standard economic volatility. You're wrestling with soaring insurance premiums, the driver retention crisis.
The volatile price of diesel, which is just all over the map.
Exactly. And constant competitive pressure on freight rates.
Yeah,
It's a field where the margins are just razor thin.
they are. And when that pressure hits, a lot of leaders naturally start thinking about a business turnaround.
Mm.
But for so long, that term has carried this really heavy stigma. It sounds like a last-ditch effort.
Like something you only do when the creditors are calling and you're already heading for Chapter 11.
Precisely.
Right. So the traditional view is that a turnaround is this heroic, reactive rescue mission.
Yeah.
So our mission for this deep dive is to, I think, fundamentally clarify what a strategic turnaround actually means. We want to show you that it's not some Hail Mary pass for a failing business.
No, it's a necessary structured tool that strong leaders use to regain control and really future-proof their operations.
Okay, so that's a huge reframing of the whole idea.
It is. And what's fascinating here is realizing that that misconception, that turnaround equals crisis idea, it actually stops leaders from seeking help when they need it most.
When they can actually do something about it.
Exactly. The real power, and all the research shows us, it lies in acting before the breakdown, while you still have the capital and, crucially, the time to choose your path.
Instead of having that path chosen for you.
That's it exactly.
So if we agree that it's a strategic reset, not a rescue,
Yeah.
what's the single biggest conceptual hurdle leaders have to get over to even start thinking this way?
Well, I think recognizing the need is often the hardest part. The hurdle is abandoning the idea that you can just make incremental improvements.
Just tweak a few things here and there.
Right. You have to redefine the concept. A successful business reset, it starts long before the business hits the wall.
Yeah.
It's not about just fixing a few loose wires.
Right.
It's a structured, systemic overhaul. It's designed to identify those deeply entrenched flaws, stabilize the immediate financial leakage, and then build a fundamentally stronger, more sustainable operating model.
So it is, by definition, a comprehensive restructure. It's not just cutting a few costs.
Not at all.
That structural definition that really clarifies the difference between, say, fixing a temporary slump and executing a real strategic turnaround. You know, think of it like this, especially if you manage a fleet. It's like pulling your truck into the workshop for a full engine inspection and a dyno run.
Yeah.
Not because you blew a gasket on the I-40, but because you notice the fuel efficiency metrics are declining and maybe the engine just isn't pulling the same torque it used to.
That analogy is perfect.
Me too.
It's absolutely perfect because it moves the entire conversation away from fear and squarely into strategy.
Right.
In the logistics world, you are constantly dealing with external factors you just can't control. Market cycles, diesel prices, you name it. So the only way to thrive is to have an iron grip on your internal operations and your costs. And a proactive turnaround, it helps you regain that grip.
So you can face that market volatility from a position of, measured strength.
Exactly. The goal is reclaiming control, not just surviving the next quarter.
But the reality is that leaders in that, day-to-day pressure cooker, they often get tunnel vision. They know things feel off, but they just keep pushing, hoping for a market correction or something.
And the research on this is pretty blunt. Denial is often the single most expensive decision you can make.
It just raises the price of the fix later on.
It absolutely does. Which brings us to the critical question of detection. How does a leader who is neck-deep in operations, how do they identify these signals early before they become catastrophic?
Okay, so what should they be looking for?
We basically distilled 5 key indicators that signal the need for a strategic reset. And the actionable guideline we want to give you is simple. If 2 or more of these sound familiar, your business is sending a very clear signal that the time for strategic action is now.
Let's look at the financial side first, because that's usually the first signal to start flashing red.
Almost always. Sign number 1 is your cash flow tightening.
Now, everyone knows what cash flow is, so let's maybe focus on the symptoms that are unique to this sector. What does it feel like?
Right. It's not just about having less money in the bank. It's the constant, desperate juggling. Are you relying on short-term, high-interest borrowing, routinely pushing payment terms with your most reliable suppliers.
Using factoring just to make payroll.
Exactly. And are those terms getting worse because you suddenly look riskier?
Yeah.
If you're losing sleep over next Tuesday's bank balance, that kind of tightrope walk is a massive red flag.
And that's often coupled with sign number 2, which is that your margins are shrinking.
Yes. This is where the profit just seems to mysteriously disappear.
And most leaders just blame the market, right? Rates are too low.
They do. But often, shrinking margins are actually a symptom of internal cost inflation that has just gone completely unchecked. We're talking about unseen cost creep.
Like what?
Well, has your preventative maintenance schedule slipped, leading to more expensive, unplanned breakdowns? Have your insurance premiums jumped 30%, but you haven't raised your rates to reflect that true cost?
So the gap between what you charge and what it actually costs you to deliver is narrowing.
It's narrowing because you don't know your true cost per mile anymore.
And that leads directly into sign number 3, debt piling up. And this is less about taking on new loans and more about just managing your existing obligations.
Absolutely. When you find yourself frequently negotiating extensions or payment holidays with creditors, you are officially trading long-term stability for short-term oxygen.
You're managing the business for the bank.
You're managing it for the bank, not for growth. In logistics, this can look like having to finance old equipment at really bad rates just because your liquidity is gone.
Which then locks you into higher operating costs for years.
For years, it's a vicious cycle.
Okay, so moving past the financials. The next 2 signs focus more on the operational structure. Sign number 4 looks at the client side. Customer relationships are weakening.
This one is so critical because it reveals a breakdown in your actual service delivery. Maybe you're missing delivery windows, or the communication from dispatch is poor because your team is just overwhelmed.
Right.
And when service quality slips, your key profitable clients, the ones who pay on time and rely on consistency, they start looking elsewhere.
And when your best clients churn, your revenue base just deteriorates.
Yeah.
Fast.
Very fast.
Yeah.
And that just compounds the pressure on your rates.
And finally, the 5th sign, which is, I think, often the most tragic reflection of all these internal pressures, is that staff morale is dropping.
The team feels the heat long before the customers do. When morale declines, driver churn goes up, dispatch productivity drops, accountability just vanishes.
It all starts to fray.
It does. In one case study we looked at, the operational issues had gotten so bad that key employees were regularly working unpaid overtime just to keep minimum service levels afloat.
Oh.
And they were buying their own office supplies because the budget controls are that tight. That creates a toxic feedback loop that just spirals into safety issues and even more service degradation.
That's a perfect summary. So if you recognize any 2 of those 5 signals, cash pressure, shrinking margins, rising debt, losing key clients, or, collapsing team morale, the message is clear. It's time to stop just diagnosing symptoms and actually start a structured turnaround.
Which brings us to the structure itself. A successful reset is not chaotic. It follows a very clear, practical 3-phase process, and it's all grounded in decisive leadership.
Okay, here's where it gets really interesting. Because this structure shows you exactly where to prioritize your energy.
Right.
I mean, you can't diagnose if you're hemorrhaging money, and you can't rebuild if you don't even know the root cause of the problem. So we start with phase 1, stabilize the situation.
This is the emergency brake. The sole goal here is achieving financial control. That means stopping the bleeding immediately.
Okay, so what kind of actions are we talking about?
The actions here are surgical, cutting non-essential costs, which in trucking might mean idling underutilized assets or eliminating some non-core service that's just draining management focus. But more importantly, it means prioritizing the high-impact cash levers.
And what does that look like in practice for a logistics business?
It means optimizing your working capital flow. Can you use technology to accelerate your invoicing from, say, a 30-day process down to a 7-day process?
Big difference.
Huge difference. Can you renegotiate factoring terms, even if it's painful, just to stabilize your immediate cash? You have to establish a crystal clear daily view of cash inflow versus outflow.
So the goal of phase 1 is strictly stability.
Strictly stability. You want to achieve a level of calm where management can finally look up and start thinking strategically rather than just surviving the day.
Once that initial pressure is released, then we can move to what you said is the most difficult phase, but also maybe the most important. Phase 2, diagnose the real problems.
This is where businesses fail if they rush it. The issues you stabilized in phase 1, like poor cash flow, Those are usually only symptoms.
Right.
The diagnostic phase is all about deep-seated investigation to uncover the actual root causes. We have to ask, why did the margins shrink?
Okay, so what are the common culprits for a logistics operation in this diagnostic
They
phase?
usually fall into one of three buckets. First, you've got fundamental pricing errors,
Meaning?
meaning the sales team might be using outdated cost models. They're failing to factor in true driver wage costs
Right.
or the real maintenance spend for an aging fleet. They're basically selling lanes at a loss without even realizing it.
Wow. Okay, what's the second bucket?
The second is rampant operational inefficiencies. This is huge in trucking.
Hmm.
Are you plagued by excessive deadhead miles where trucks are just running empty?
Is your utilization rate too low?
Exactly. Or are you ignoring critical metrics like dwell time at major distribution hubs?
So it's not just that you need fewer trucks, it's that the trucks you do have are being used really inefficiently.
Precisely. And the third bucket is critically weak internal controls. Is there leakage in your fuel purchasing? Are maintenance contracts inflated? Is there poor visibility into driver hours, leading to compliance risk?
All uncomfortable questions.
Very. Phase 2 requires those uncomfortable conversations and a really objective, data-driven assessment. The goal is absolute clarity on what failed structurally.
So you don't rebuild that same flaw right back into the system.
You got it.
And then, armed with that clarity, you can move into the strategic transformation. Phase 3, rebuild and strengthen.
This is where you actually transform the company based on the surgical findings of Phase 2. The strategy here is not to return to the old normal. It's to create a new, sustainable one.
What does that involve?
It means actively improving cash flow through technology. Maybe implementing a transportation management system, a TMS, to optimize routing and ensure higher asset utilization. It means restructuring debt where possible to ease that long-term burden.
And what about the people, the clients and the team?
Crucially, you redefine your core priorities. This might mean dropping unprofitable lanes or clients that you identified back in Phase 2. You focus your resources only on the high-margin work.
And you define new service levels you can actually deliver consistently.
Yes. And finally, you have to restore confidence. The team needs to see the new path, and the clients need to feel the improved service quality that comes from a stable, newly efficient operation.
This entire, sophisticated process, it really hinges, as we mentioned, on leadership and timing. I want to go back and challenge that core assumption again. Why do so many business owners hesitate? Why do they see starting this process as an admission of failure?
Because they see it as waving a white flag, when in reality, it's a mark of extreme managerial discipline. The source material is unequivocal on this. The best time to start is when you recognize those two signals.
Before you're actually out of cash.
Way before. It is infinitely easier, cheaper, and faster to correct your direction when you still have a strong enough balance sheet to invest in the necessary technology or advisory support.
That's the strategic difference right there. A turnaround, when it's done proactively, isn't evidence of weakness. It's evidence of strong, mature leadership.
It shows genuine courage, recognizing the need for serious, often painful change, and then taking decisive, structured action that demonstrates profound responsibility.
For the future of the company, for your employees.
For your employees and for your commitment to your clients. It's about leveraging the experience of those tough times to start smarter. You use that hard-won clarity from the diagnosis phase to build a foundation that can actually withstand the next market downturn.
So if you are beginning to see signs that your business is heading off course, if you're feeling that pressure in your cash position or the fatigue in your team, the time to act is now.
It is, because the earlier you pivot, the more strategic options you'll retain, and the smoother the road to genuine revitalization will be.
So to summarize the key takeaways here, a business turnaround is not a desperate financial rescue. It is a strategic management reset for future-proofing your company.
Right.
This process is defined by 3 essential non-negotiable phases: stabilize, diagnose, and rebuild. And it has to be triggered by paying cold, objective attention to those early warning indicators, like internal cost creep, shrinking margins, and dropping staff accountability.
Long before you actually miss a debt payment.
Long before. Implementing this structured approach is the key to regaining financial stability, restoring sustainable profitability, and rebuilding that crucial confidence both internally and externally. And here is a final thought for you to chew on. You wouldn't wait for an axle to snap on the highway before you check the alignment on your tractor trailer. Business strategy is exactly the same. What matters most isn't avoiding those inevitable tough market cycles, but recognizing the exact moment when it's time to pull your entire operation into the strategic workshop and get the expert support you need to get your business firmly back in gear.